Do you remember your first taste of freedom? If you were young enough, that excitement likely came with the belief that you're invincible, that nothing bad would ever happen to you. In fact, I remember never even thinking about it, just acting. But we were lucky. We're still here to talk about it. Natalee Holloway, on a high school graduation trip with her classmates and chaperones, did not. And her name is now inextricably linked to Aruba and the tragedy that unfolded in May 2005. Today, I'm going to tell you about the desperate search made even more difficult by conflicting facts, suspected corruption, and painful glimmers of hope. I'm Laura. I'm here with my two best friends, Colby and Marina, and this is Grim.
I'm about to question all of my childhood decisions and wonder how I'm still alive.
I know.
Yep. Cases like this make me wonder the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I in fact, we'll get into it, obviously all the details, but I actually went to Aruba 2 years after this happened. And I remember I had heard all about it. People talked about it, and I went with a friend and her parents who had a timeshare. So it was pretty locked down, and still I was not fazed. Not at all. Even with this story having happened just 2 years before.
No, you were invincible, like you said.
How old were you?
I was 18. It was my freshman year of college.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Invincible.
Nothing bad happens to 18-year-old college students. It can't.
No, especially when you go somewhere where the drinking age is 18. And
no, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So before we get into that, I just have to acknowledge that I really wasn't kidding when I said I love to copy what Colby does for cases, because she just did an unsolved case. So now I must do an unsolved case with a missing person. And if you haven't already listened to Colby's case on Jason Landry, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite episodes to date, actually.
Oh, thank you.
So
and I'm glad I inspired you to do an unsolved. And I'm so sorry to all of our listeners who are like, damn it, Colby.
I know. Now, this one I would say is more solved than Jason Landry's, but it's tough. It is a tough case and infamous. So I think most folks have heard about this. I will also say that I did choose this case prior to knowing what yours was, but still, I must follow you.
It is infamous, but it's one of those cases, again, where I know her name, and I know she went missing when she was in Aruba.
Yep.
But that's about the extent of what I know.
That was also all I knew. And shout out to our Discord folks who had made the suggestion for this case, because I was kind of deciding what next case to do. So thanks for the suggestion.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And if you want to get on our Discord, you can just go to Patreon and search Grim: a true crime podcast.
Thanks, Marina.
You're welcome, Laura.
Up next on our site. No, I'm just kidding. So, as I said, this is an infamous case, and as a result, the amount of content to consume was nearly endless. I read through, and I only know this because, so just to give you a little peek into how I do my research, I do start on Wikipedia, but I go down to their sources and I open every single one. And there were like 200 just on Wikipedia. And then I did a whole bunch of other searches and all that. So that was fun. And those were all the way back to 2005, of course. So shout out to the Wayback Machine for preserving all these articles. But what I found reading through these was inconsistency after inconsistency. And I think that's just largely due to the fact that this was an unsolved case, or is an unsolved case. And so the theories out there are just that.
Yeah.
We know how it goes. Somebody reads something, they don't check the source, don't realize that it's not truth, and then they repeat it as truth, and so on and so forth. So I don't want to do that. I did check and cross-check everything. I think I start every single one of my cases like this, but I feel like it's really important to remind people that we try really hard. We do a lot of research, but we're not investigative journalists. And By the way, they get it wrong too. When the facts are confusing, there's different stories out there. That's what happens. So just like to put my little disclaimer out there.
The truth is out there.
Do, 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 do.
Thank you.
Do, 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 do. Okay, I'm real done.
So as we always do, I'd like to start with telling you about the main person in our case today, Natalee.
Yeah, let's meet Natalee.
Yes. So Natalee Ann Holloway was born in Memphis, Tennessee on October 21st, 1986 to parents Dave and Beth Holloway. 2 years later, she was joined by her brother Matt. At some point when the kids were young, the family moved to Clinton, Mississippi. Her parents then divorced in 1993, and Natalee and Matt lived mostly with their mother. Beth met George Jug Twitty in 2000.
Love it.
That's a name.
It is a name, and that is how he goes.
And this was Mississippi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I accept that.
Yep. Well, and then they moved to Mountain Brook, Alabama.
I accept
Yep.
Twitty there as well.
Yeah. Yes. Not that's what got you, not Jug.
Well, I forgot the middle. I knew it was very southern, but I couldn't remember
Yes.
exactly what it was.
Yep.
But I could remember Twitty.
So Mountain Brook, where they moved to, is a wealthy suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. And Natalee's father also remarried. From what I can tell, decent relationship, and the kids still saw their father. They attended the Mountain Brook school system, beginning when Natalee was in 8th grade and Matt was in 6th, where Beth also had a job as a speech pathologist. Dave worked at State Farm Insurance, and it really would not be a grim episode if someone didn't talk about insurance.
You had to squeeze it in.
Yep, I had to mention that.
If we can't find it, we're like, somebody worked there. All right, let's look up
And
work
Beth's
job
third cousin.
histories. Job histories of.
Yep. But Natalee broke our cardinal grim rule. The 5'4" athletic blonde with blue eyes lit up a room.
You can do that.
No, don't recommend. Be mean.
Be mean, it saves lives. But not so mean that you're Liz Gollier / Shanna Gollier / whatever you want to call her.
Exactly. So Natalee quickly developed 2 close friends upon arriving at Mountain Brook, which I personally think says a lot about her at that age. To move and then create friends, so this was 8th grade for her, is really hard.
Outgoing.
Yes. These 2 friends, Claire and Mally, say that she was obsessed with the Wizard of Oz and her dog, Macy.
I thought you were going to say Toto.
And her little dog, Macy. Natalee was a great jazz dancer on the school dance team every year, and she was careful, not a rule bender, and she was smart, always getting good grades and offering to help others. She was a member of the National Honor Society and planned to attend the University of Alabama on a full scholarship studying pre-med.
Wow.
Yeah. She was a helper across the board. She worked weekends at Mally's mom's food store, which employed autistic adults, and Mally says Natalee was their favorite coworker.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. I told you she broke the grim rule.
Yeah.
You can't be like that.
Yeah, the assholes never get gone. I was going to say murdered, but this
Never
is
get
an
gone.
unsolved case.
Yeah.
They never get gone.
No, do not light up a room. We keep saying it. Being such an accomplished, responsible young woman, it was no surprise that Natalee was allowed to attend the high school graduation trip to Aruba, a yearly tradition for students at Mountain Brook.
That's pretty serious.
It's pretty sweet. It is, I said, a wealthy suburb of Birmingham, so it's just, I guess that's what you do for high school, is go to Aruba. It's pretty
Sounds
cool.
awesome.
I didn't
actually.
go to Aruba for high school.
I did not.
No, but 125 seniors did from Mountain Brook, accompanied by 7 chaperones. They left on Thursday, May 26th, 2005, to spend 5 days on the Happy Island. Now, 2005 doesn't seem that long ago, at least in my brain, but it was a pretty different time. So I have a few grim facts to put you in the mindset of that year.
2005 can vote, so.
Oh, the year can vote.
But it can't drink.
It can't drink, but it can buy lottery tickets.
It
Can't buy
depends
weed.
on when its birthday was, because it's only January 10th. So most of 2005 can't vote.
But some
some.
of 2005
okay.
can vote, fight in a war, buy cigarettes, and buy lottery tickets.
Sober.
Yeah. And now Laura is going to tell us things that are going to make us feel real fucking old, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay. So YouTube and Reddit launched online for the first time. And Facebook had just come out the year before.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Oh, no.
Friends wrapped up its last episode the year before, and The Office, the one with Steve Carell, debuted in March.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, I vividly remember watching the debut of The Office. Oh, that was so long ago.
Maybe you'll remember this one. Carrie Underwood won American Idol.
No! In 2005? Oh, man.
This one will get you. The best-selling mobile device was the Motorola Razr.
Fucking knew you were
Yeah.
going to say that stupid Razor. Oh my
Yep.
God, they were so cool.
Followed by the Nokia 6230 and the Palm 1. If that doesn't scream
Wow.
2005, I don't know.
Where's my
Palm.
T-Mobile Sidekick? I'm looking
I
for
know,
that one.
It was probably on the list. I just didn't put it here.
Oh, man, the Razor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had one.
You
I loved
weren't.
it.
You were a nobody if you didn't have a Razor, which I never had.
I was a big nobody.
Well, you guys are in the presence of greatness.
I never
You're
had
welcome.
one.
So iPhones actually wouldn't be released for another 2 years. Oh. Now, on to more relevant points. This
That was relevant.
well, the cell phone actually is a little bit relevant, only a tiny bit. But this was just 2 years after Elizabeth Smart had been found after being kidnapped for 9 months. And it was also in the midst of the Michael Jackson allegations. So cases in the news were big. It was also the year that Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans and the Gulf Coast.
Oh my gosh, the media must have been having a field. They
Yes.
didn't even know what to focus on.
Yes,
They're
and-
like, there's too much tragedy.
And there was a bit more to latch onto, but you are spot on. So now that you're hopefully better prepared to either remember or imagine, if you're young enough, what it was like in 2005, let me also set the context of the location. Aruba is a constituent country in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which naturally I had to go get a clear definition of what that was. A constituent country is somewhere between a state and a sovereign country where the territory has some autonomy in ruling but follows the politics of the kingdom. So the best example is the UK. So within, well, not the UK itself, the kingdom.
Yep.
And it has 3 constituent countries, Britain, Wales, and Scotland. Tourism is Aruba's largest industry, seeing over 1 million tourists a year. Nearly 75% of these people come from North America. But despite the large number of tourists, the crime rate is actually very low, like single-digit murders and rapes reported in a given year kind of low.
Oh, wow.
Who wants to commit crime on such a beautiful tropical
Exactly.
island?
And they're all employed. The unemployment rate is less than 1%.
Wow.
I think Aruba's slogan literally is one happy
It
island.
is.
That's why I
Yeah.
said that earlier on.
It
is. About 72,000 happy people live in Aruba, which is located in the Caribbean Sea, about 18 miles north of South America. It's a small island. It's only 20 miles long and 6 miles wide at its widest point. Most of the hotels and resorts are on the western coast due to its calmer waters, protected from the rough Atlantic by the island. And indeed, this is where the Holiday Inn was located that Natalee and her classmates were staying in.
Hotel, motel, Holiday Inn.
Do you know I said that every single time I wrote Holiday Inn? And I was like, not appropriate, Laura, not appropriate.
How could you not say it, though?
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. You love... I thought you said I love people. I was like, cool. Cool.
I love lamp.
Do you really love lamp, or are you just saying you love lamp?
I love lamp. I love lamp.
Anyway.
We digress.
Really. It was a solid week of making memories for the students and then subsequently losing them thanks to a little too much alcohol since, as I said earlier, the legal drinking age was 18, though most of the bars didn't bother to check IDs anyway.
Could you imagine being one of the chaperones on this trip? Like, you got to be a special person.
Yep.
These kids are going to get wild.
From what I can tell, that is exactly what happened, and that was what was allowed to happen. So I saw interviews and reports that the students were not going to be allowed back into the Holiday Inn the next year, and they were constantly out. People were too sick to go to breakfast. It was
Wow.
just everyone had I actually don't know what the point, and this is not an insult to the chaperones. I just don't know what the point. I don't know what they did.
Right.
There was people were switching rooms, going to different rooms every night. It was chaos.
I agree with you that it takes a special kind of person to be a chaperone on a trip like that, but I would assume, which you know what happens when you assume, but I would assume that the rule of the trip was that you cannot drink because it's a high school field trip and the
Yeah.
drinking age where you're from is 21.
I
Or
don't
they
think that
just
was the
let them?
expectation. They let them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yes, it is. It is a grim fact. Interesting grim fact.
Wow.
Yeah. So the flight home was Monday. It was scheduled for Monday morning. So most of them chose to pack their bags the night before so they'd be able to sleep in as late as possible. That night, that last night, Sunday, May 29th, Natalee and her friends spent some time in the hotel casino because it was also legal to gamble at 18.
Was there a point to this school trip?
Celebrating graduation. They had done it years before. Like, it was a tradition for the school.
That's so interesting. I can't understand. I can't understand because it doesn't exist in my universe.
It's not like a school sponsored trip. I think it is just that they, at least I don't believe so.
Oh, it's
Like
when
they
they pay for it.
discounted.
Oh,
like
I don't think. No, I think the students and parents
but
rather
it's like discounted.
Group rates.
I don't think. I mean, maybe a group rate, but I don't think it was through the school. I think it is just a tradition that the seniors go to Aruba.
But they're chaperones. That sounds organized to me.
I will let you know that I didn't get all of this information on like what release forms were sent home to parents and who said what.
We're really clinging to like the least important
No fucking
detail.
shit. I got 15 other pages. I will say though that Natalee's father was actually against her going. And it was her mother that was like, no, she's responsible. All the kids do it. Back to the night of the 29th, it was in the casino that Natalee encountered 17-year-old Joran van der Sloot, who was a regular there. Joran joined the seniors on a trip to Carlos and Charlie's, a bar in the capital of Oranjestad, about a 15-minute drive away. When the bar closed at 1 a.m., Natalee's friends witnessed her leaving in a car with Joran and his two friends, Deepak Kalpo, who was 21, and his 18-year-old brother, Satish. This was the last time anyone saw Natalee.
Why would she go alone?
I don't know.
Buddy system.
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know. I'm not blaming any of her friends by any means, but I don't know why no one was like, that seems like a bad idea.
Well, I think where I was kind of going with that was she went of her own free will. Like, she wanted to go with them. Okay.
Yep.
I can see it happening though. Mm-hmm. You're 18. You could have a friend say, I don't think that you should go by yourself. True. And she's like, go back. I'm done. Like, I'm going. Don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. They're nice. I met them.
And they had all been talking way earlier in the casino and then separated and then gotten back together at the bar. Okay. So in 18-year-old world, that's like 10 years. So.
And yeah, when you're 18 and you meet people on vacation, you just wander away with strangers. Like,
and he was 17. He's not a creepy old man. I mean, he's a 17-year-old their age. So, and even 21 and 18 isn't that
close enough.
Great of a. And I'm sure she didn't know that was their ages at the time.
Right.
But the next morning, Natalee's roommates notified one of the chaperones, Jody Behrman, that Natalee had not come back to her room the night before. But her passport and luggage, including her cell phone, were all there. Now, we think like, oh my God, how would you leave your cell phone there? But she didn't bring it out. This was 2005. I don't know, she had a Nokia or a Razor. She probably had a Razor. But it wasn't the norm to bring your cell phone with you everywhere. And she's international. So it's going to cost a lot. You're not going to go text or call your friends. Right. You probably weren't even texting, actually. You were T9ing.
You probably had it on airplane mode and were just using it as your 1 megapixel camera.
Exactly. No, they probably had the separate digital cameras, I bet you.
Oh, yeah.
The Nikon cool shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was rewatching Laguna Beach and the Hills, and they most definitely had digital cameras, like separate out in the bar that they brought with them.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so she didn't have her cell phone. After a fruitless search, Jody contacted Aruban police and called Beth, Natalee's mother, to make her aware of the situation. A few hours later, the other 124 seniors boarded the plane to return home without Natalee. Now, Beth knew Natalee was a responsible person. There was no way she would have purposely missed that flight. Beth was immediately convinced that Natalee had been kidnapped or worse. She called 911 to report that her daughter was missing in Aruba and that she needed help. She said she was driving at 120 miles per hour and no one could stop her. She did get pulled over.
Except for that cop.
Yeah. But the state trooper was actually really helpful and put her in touch with the FBI.
Oh.
The same day, a family friend arranged a private jet for Beth and Jug to fly down to Aruba that evening to look for her.
Wow.
Yeah. It's good to have good friends. Dave, Natalee's father, remember, caught a flight the next day. He didn't quite make it onto the private jet. I actually don't think it was intentional. I think it was I think she quite literally dropped everything and flew down.
It was like, you're on this plane or you're not coming.
Exactly. Through classmates' accounts and the fact that Jug's nephew, who had also been on the trip, had happened to play poker with Urine and knew his name, Beth determined that Urine had been the last to see her daughter. Unfortunately, the night manager at the hotel also knew Urine, and he said that he knew that the teenager liked to harass young female tourists.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Beth and Jug went around everywhere showing Natalee's picture. They also got help somehow from Charles Crows, an Aruban who owned a local cell phone rental company. I'm not sure how he heard of this or got in touch. I don't know how he appeared. But it was Charles who, in searching near the hotel, came across a group of teenagers who happened to know Urine and provided his home address. Charles, Beth, Jug, and their friends, and now 2 Aruban police officers, arrived at Urine's. And I'll note here that the order of events and related details vary slightly from a couple of the interviews that I read, but this is the gist of what happened. So they questioned Urine in the presence of his father, who happened to be a newly appointed Aruban judge. Urine admitted that he left the bar with Natalee and that they went to see a lighthouse, but that he and his friends dropped her back off at the Holiday Inn at 2 a.m. Urine said she stumbled as she began to walk up the path to the hotel, but rudely declined his offer to help. As he was getting back in the car, Urine says he saw someone who looked like a security guard approach her from the hotel. So Urine was insistent on his story and offered to show them exactly where he had left her and point out the security guard he had seen. So they all went back to the Holiday Inn.
Yeah. I think I know some of this. It's ringing a bell.
Yep. Urine said Natalee had gone into the lobby, but Beth had actually reviewed the hotel security footage from that night, and Natalee was never seen re-entering the lobby.
Okay, good. I was going to ask you if they had security cameras that were functioning at the hotel that night.
But they told basically nothing because even though they hadn't seen Natalee come in, it should be noted that the way the hotel was set up, Natalee could have gotten into the building where her room was by going outside, not necessarily through the lobby.
Okay.
Regardless, we know she never made it back to her room. As far as identifying the guard, after a show of asking around, Urine couldn't find who he was looking for. Could have just not been working. It's a different day.
Yeah.
Who knows? By now, it was nearly 5 o'clock Tuesday morning. Beth had been going nonstop for 24 hours. The police told her to catch a couple hours of sleep and that the detective would be back to talk with them around 8 a.m.
How could you sleep?
Yeah. I'm sure she didn't. 3 hours later, the detective arrived as promised, but told him he didn't have any questions and left again. In the brief conversations that followed, police told Beth things like, Natalee's probably just out partying, or if they go to ladies' night at the bar, she'll probably show up. So this is, I'm telling you, I copied your case because it feels very, very similar to when the police were judging Jason for, God forbid he had drugs. God forbid Natalee was out partying. You know, they didn't take it seriously, it seemed.
And missed her flight back home with her whole group.
Right.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean. Like, I could imagine, okay, if somebody had raised the concern at 1 a.m. she was not back, or 2 a.m. she wasn't back. But to miss a flight, something bad must have happened is what I would be thinking.
Or even if it's not the day they're leaving, like the middle of the trip or whatever, where it's like not the next day. They're like, oh, well, you know, she's just off somewhere doing whatever, but...
Yeah. So the police did agree to help before Natalee was officially considered missing because it had been less than 48 hours. But they were definitely lacking the urgency that Beth and Jug expected. And the worried parents were not afraid to show it. This was actually the start of a deepening divide between the Twitties and the Aruban police. Natalee's family and friends were on their own, almost. Beth had she was very resourceful. She thought to go to the local paper run by Julia Renfro, who had been born in America. So on June 1st, 2 days after Natalee was reported missing, Julia and one of the paper's reporters, Angela Munzenhofer, helped to organize the search party comprised of hundreds of volunteers from Aruba and abroad. They combed through the island, which no longer seemed so tiny. There were so many glimmers of hope. I cannot imagine how excruciating these first few days were. On Thursday, they received a tip saying that Natalee was being held at a location that would be disclosed if they received $4,000. So the family immediately scraped up the money in cash and arrived to find a crack house and no Natalee. The next day, a girl that looked exactly like Natalee was spotted stepping into a car on the other side of the island. After a hurried chase, the passengers of the car were brought to the police station, and you already know it was not Natalee. But they continued searching. They were even able to work with the Dutch Marines to obtain a search helicopter, and the Aruban government gave 4,000 civil servants a day off to help with the search.
Wow.
Finally, there was some legitimate progress. On June 5th, authorities detained 2 security guards of a nearby hotel based on Urin's claim that that's who he saw last. 30-year-old Mickey John and 28-year-old Abraham Jones were arrested on suspicion of first and second-degree murder and capital kidnapping, the latter of which is invoked when the kidnapping victim is killed. So both men worked at another hotel, the Allegro, 2 blocks away, but neither of them were working the night that Natalee disappeared, as the hotel had been closed for renovations. So already a little suspicious.
So they just jumped right to murder in this scenario, not like...
Honestly, it is a big question mark, because on some news articles, it seemed exactly like that. Like, they're going right for, they assume something terrible happened, and then on some, there are complaints that they weren't doing enough or they weren't doing it frequently enough. And I think that the majority of the divide came from that pure desperation from
Yep.
Beth and the family, and the expectations that are set in the United States for how we handle investigations and missing persons and all that. And it's just so very different in Aruba. I think they're far more tight-lipped in Aruba too. So we're used to, certainly if you were in this situation with being a parent with a missing child, you would have a bunch of information as it went.
Yep.
And I don't think that was the style there. Authorities searched the 2 security guards' homes, but found nothing related to Natalee. So both Mickey and Abraham were released. But Beth and Jug were furious that Urin hadn't also been arrested. They, and what seemed like now the entire American press, who had arrived a few days before, felt that Urin was being protected because his father, Paulus, remember, worked as the Aruban judge.
Yeah, that made me uneasy when you said his dad was a newly appointed judge.
So feeling pressured, authorities finally arrested Urin and the Calpo brothers on Thursday, June 9th, nearly a week and a half after Natalee's disappearance. During questioning, Urin admitted that he lied in his initial account of what happened that night. He said that they hadn't actually dropped Natalee off at the hotel. Instead, Deepak dropped Urin and Natalee off at the beach, where Urin had hoped to score. But he said Natalee was so drunk that she was barely conscious. And being the gentleman that he was, he just left her there and walked home a distance of about 2 miles.
Very gentlemanly to leave her there.
Yeah. On June 23rd, while Urin remained in custody, his apartment and surrounding area on his parents' property, I tried to look at the street view. I think it was kind of like an apartment over a garage type thing. It was searched, and on June 15th, investigators seized 2 vehicles, computers, and cameras. The next week, Paulus, again, that's Urin's father, was arrested on possible suspicion of helping to cover something up. This was largely based on his statement that he had picked up Urin and the Calpos at 4 a.m. after Natalee was last seen, but he later changed his story to say that he picked them up at 11 from the hotel. So this is an example of, to get those 2 sentences, I read so many articles and there was such conflicting information about what statements were read when. And I think that the main cause of that is, I guess in Aruba, detectives do not talk to the press. So unlike here where there's statements and there's very specific, legitimate information, there must have been just passing comments that came out or things that Beth had found out that she then reported. So it was really hard to get an accurate account of who said what, when, and why. All the W's.
I was just thinking it's probably good that the detectives don't talk to the media, but that has to come with pros and cons, because we have press conferences and they give information so that people aren't out speculating and releasing all these wild theories that then get published as fact. They're giving you the information they can.
Exactly.
Without ruining the investigation.
Exactly. So there was mounting pressure for the Aruban authorities to actually charge Urin and the Calpo brothers, but instead they arrested Steve Crows, a 26-year-old DJ who worked on a party boat that had been docked near the Holiday Inn the night Natalee went missing. This sounds like a lot of arrests, at least that's what I thought at this point, and it is, but that's only because investigations also are handled a little differently in Aruba. Aruban law states that only serious suspicions from investigators, not solid evidence, are needed for a judge to rule that suspects can be held for up to 116 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
and
different.
a suspect can be held for 3 days before even facing a judge. So I liken this to people being brought in for questioning. It seems like they don't really need proof that someone has done anything, but just that they suspect they could know something or be related. The police said that Joran or the Kalpos had implicated Steve, but he was released on June 27th due to insufficient evidence. Joran's father, Paulus, was released the same day. And then on July 4th, police announced that they were also releasing Deepak and Satish, leaving Joran as the only one behind bars.
All by himself.
Yes, he was. For the next 2 months, he was. He remained in custody and was continually questioned, so I guess not that alone. Natalee's loved ones searched relentlessly despite worsening relations with the Aruban government and volunteers alike. Beth, a desperate mother, and Jug, a powerful man with a quick temper, had pushed away Charles Crows and Julia and Angela from the paper, who had done so much to help them early on.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I think they were just blaming everyone. They were chasing everyone, and I can't say I would have done any differently. And worse, the police were no longer cooperating with them, even though they were continuing their investigation. So new leads appeared, but brought as many dead ends. A strand of blonde hair had been found stuck to a piece of duct tape on July 17th, but after analysis from the FBI, it was determined to not be a match. A belt was also found near the lighthouse that Joran said that they had visited, but nothing came of that either.
Was it hers?
No.
Okay.
No. I think they thought it was his, but there's not, these articles are like 3 paragraphs long. They're like, new development in the Natalee Holloway case, a belt was found, and then that's all you ever read of it.
I hate those articles.
They drive me nuts, and they're also, because they're on the Wayback Machine, they're like in Times New Roman and all broken, and but yeah, I mean, I think that's honestly probably how it went. Is you heard there might be hope, and then nothing, and all you're left to assume is that that was not helpful information. So in addition to a foot search of nearly the entire island, specially trained dogs were brought in, and even an F-16 used infrared to try to identify a body or a grave. On July 26th, a gardener alleged that he saw Joran and the Kalpos digging near one of the hotels. So authorities drained a pond nearby, but found nothing.
Just like Jason Landry.
So many ponds drained.
Yes. Can you imagine what you probably did find in there, though?
No, I do
So
not want
gross.
to.
So they found nothing in this pond. And on July 28th, yet another witness claimed to see the suspects dumping a body in a landfill just 2 days after Natalee had disappeared. So they searched the landfill. Nada.
That must be so frustrating, too, to chase false leads.
I'm telling you all this all in the time of a paragraph, but this was days and days and days. And the months just went on, and every single one, if I were Beth or Dave, I would think maybe this is it. And how awful to be wishing that it's your daughter's body that they're finding.
Right.
It's just
Terrible.
awful. Beth finally went to the Aruban Prime Minister for help. This may have been the driver behind the August 26th rearrests of Deepak and Satish. But like every other time that summer, this flicker of hope was extinguished when a judge ordered that Joran be released 5 days later and the brothers the day after that.
Was that judge's dad?
No.
Okay.
And it's unclear. There were so many articles, and this is just, I think, a result of the obsession of the press with this story. There were so many articles accusing that. And Beth, I think, was actually a driver behind this because she was so frustrated with the lack of information and progress from the government that she even thought that the timing of all that was intentional. Because remember I said that Hurricane Katrina had hit that year? That was right on that week that Joran and the brothers were released. And her theory was that the American news and press were focused now on Hurricane Katrina, taking the pressure off. And that's why they released them. There is nothing to substantiate that. But I see again, I'm putting myself in her place. I don't know. I might think that too, if that's been my experience with the government that whole time.
Absolutely.
In reality, there was no evidence, no body.
No body, no crime.
And it was time to let them go. But there was reason to be suspicious. Not as much, at least in my opinion, of the Kalpo brothers, though I have no doubt that they were accessories to whatever happened. Their internet searches and phone records show that they were home by around 2 a.m., But for urine, it's small details that put together tell a concerning story. For example, although the Kalpos were home, phone records show that urine called Deepak around 2:40 a.m. and then again at 3 a.m., I presume to pick him up. The records also show that he was in the general location of the hotel at that point. That same night, someone broke into a fisherman's hut and stole a machete and maybe a lobster trap. Right.
Maybe a lobster trap is why I'm giggling.
I don't like the machete, though.
No, and I said, coincidence? I don't know. Urine certainly appears to be the type of person capable of something like this. FBI profilers described him as a person who has never been corrected by his parents. He's the boss of what happens in that house. He's the boss of the family. He is allowed to do anything. And if a person like that is in a position where a person says no, well, that person may change completely. Oh. So maybe he blew a fuse when she wouldn't have sex with him and something happened. And that was all according to the FBI profiler, although I happen to agree.
I don't like that.
No. Now, if you couldn't get urine to tell you exactly what happened, who better to ask than those who were with him that night? And that is exactly what was contained on what are known as the Skeeters tapes. And we are not talking about Doug's best friend,
Okay.
but a private investigator named Jamie Skeeters, who in September 2005 had secretly taped a conversation with Deepak Kalpo.
Ooh.
Now, somehow, this will bring you right back to 2005 as well. The Dr. Phil show, of all places, got a hold of this tape legally. Like Jamie Skeeters gave them the tape and played it on air. This version that was played implied that Deepak was saying that Natalee had sex with him, his brother, and urine. However, the Aruban police produced a full version of the recording, and it appeared that the Dr. Phil version had been edited to make it sound worse than it was.
I hate that.
That is not what Deepak was saying. In the Dr. Phil version, Jamie can be heard saying, "I'm sure she had sex with all of you," and Deepak replies, "She did. You'd be surprised how simple it was."
Ooh.
But in the full version, after Jamie said, "I'm sure she had sex with all of you," Deepak replied, "No, she didn't." Jamie pushed, saying, "I mean, good, but if she did, fine." And Deepak said, "You would be surprised how simple it was that night," I think likely implying how intoxicated Natalee was. Now, I'll note here as well that I read several versions of this comparison, some more blatant than others. So some of them said that Deepak said how simple it would have been versus how simple it was, and how some think that even the longer version was edited and that he actually had admitted to having sex with her. What it boils down to is we don't even know what the real tape was. We don't know if it was edited before getting to Dr. Phil. We don't know at any point. So either way, the Kalpos sued the Dr. Phil show and Jamie Skeeters for defamation. The trial, this is a little bit of unnecessary information, but naturally I had to put it in.
Yep.
The trial was set to begin on October 12th, 2011, which seemed outrageously late for me. But when I read through kind of all the articles related to this, it seems like delays and considerations were relentless. I saw articles all the way into 2014 where they were debating if Deepak was considered a limited purpose public figure. So they were trying to figure out if they could even proceed with this lawsuit. But that just seemed really late because this was all in like 2005.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, amidst this drama, Urine had officially graduated from high school because remember, he was 17 when all this happened, and he left Aruba to go to college in Holland. Frustrated that Urine had been able to go on with his life, Beth worked with Alabama's government to launch a boycotting campaign against travel to Aruba in an effort to pressure the government into taking action.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. She went hard. So, and it kind of shows how it makes sense that she had a pretty bad and worsening relationship with the government, the Aruban government. She was so successful that several southern states, including Alabama, pledged to boycott travel to Aruba until the investigation was handled better. Now, authorities were still conducting their investigation, but it would be months before they made another arrest.
Wow.
Taking matters into their own hands, Beth and Dave, so again, that's Natalee's father, sued Urine for, quote, malicious, wanton, and willful disregard of rights, safety, and well-being of the plaintiffs and their daughter, Natalee Holloway. But the judge dismissed it. The next year, they also tried suing the Kalpos, but that too was dismissed. So they are throwing everything they can at this investigation. Things got interesting again, though, on March 1st, 2006, when Urine voluntarily appeared on ABC's Primetime. In this interview, he confirmed that he met Natalee while he was playing poker at the hotel's casino. Natalee and her friends were also gambling, so they had struck up a conversation. He says that they had asked him to join them at Carlos and Charlie's later that night, and that he had originally declined. It was a Sunday and he had school the next morning.
Very responsible.
Oh, yes. Besides, he said Sunday was a boring night for the bar. He called his father to pick him up. Urine didn't have a driver's license. You actually have to be 18 in Aruba. So at 18, you can gamble, drink, and drive.
Okay.
Hopefully not all together.
Okay.
Anyway, Urine asked his dad to bring him home around 10 or 11. So this is actually consistent with Paulus's revised statement of the timing. And he knew his father wouldn't approve of him going to the bar. He was already displeased with Urine's frequency at the casino, so he decided to go home and then sneak out. And that's when he called Deepak to pick him up.
So was Urine saying that those were the phone calls that you told us about earlier? Like that first one to Deepak was like, oh, come pick me up. I'm sneaking out of my dad's place.
No, because that was much later.
Okay.
So the timing for him sneaking out was probably, I think he said around midnight, because he was saying he wasn't even at the bar for that long.
Okay.
The calls that he had made, that he claimed he made to Deepak earlier, well, that I told you earlier, were at 2:40 and 3 a.m. So they met up with Natalee and her friends at the bar, and much drinking and dancing ensued until the bar closed. He says Natalee asked if she could go with them, so they all piled into Deepak's car, Satish in the front seat, Urine and Natalee in the back. While they were talking in the car, she said she wanted to see his house, so he was hoping they'd have sex. Mm-hmm. They spent much of the ride making out in the back seat while Deepak drove. Urine says they did actually make it to his house, but when they parked, Natalee said she wanted to then go see the ocean. They drove to the beach near the Marriott, which is maybe half a mile north of the Holiday Inn. Deepak dropped Urine and Natalee off at the beach and agreed to come get them later. Urine had intended to have sex with her, but he says he didn't because he didn't have a condom. So they just cuddled and then walked a little bit on the beach.
Okay, so not because she was too intoxicated this time, because he did not have a condom.
Yes,
okay.
Gentleman. Mm-hmm. So finally he said it was getting late and he had school the next day, so he wanted to get home. But Natalee didn't want to leave, so he told her he was calling Deepak to pick him up. It ended up actually being Satish who arrived, and Urine got in the car and left Natalee on the beach. This is all what Urine said on that interview on ABC.
And that's that call that probably happened at 2:45.
Yes, I think so. And what my guess is, if we're to believe what Urine said, is he probably called at 2:40. Deepak was probably asleep. And then he called at 3 o'clock and Satish agreed to get him, is what I think. Now, overall, it's pretty consistent with what his revised story was when he was last detained. And witness statements possibly give credit to it. Natalee was certainly under the influence. Several people came forward saying Natalee had bought drugs that night and was drinking heavily, including doing body shots on the bar.
That's so rough, though, because, oh man, again, this really is a lot of parallels to Jason Landry here. Like, just because you bought drugs, you wanted to do something crazy, you're on vacation.
Exactly.
Like, now it's sort of like clouds how people think about her.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the next flicker of hope for Natalee's loved ones came on April 15th, 2006, when 19-year-old Jeffrey Van Cromvoort was arrested in connection with Natalee's disappearance. Jeffrey worked for his family's private security company that patrols beaches outside of Aruban hotels. He also sold drugs, but possibly GHB, which is the date rape drug. Oh. But like all of the previous arrests, without enough evidence to prove his involvement, he was released on April 22nd. A short time later, on May 17th, Guido Weaver was arrested. I did not make up all these names. These are the real names.
I love Guido Weaver.
It's a good one. Yep. So Guido worked at the casino at the Holiday Inn and was friends with Urine. But like Jeffrey, although he was a suspect, he was not formally charged and he was released 6 days later. Around the same time, likely in an effort to deal with his grief and frustrations, Dave Holloway published a book in April 2006 called Aruba, the Tragic Untold Story of Natalee Holloway and Corruption in Paradise. Urine also wrote a book published in 2007 called The Case of Natalee Holloway, entirely in Dutch. And many people think he was just taking an opportunity to make money from the situation because it doesn't go into detail about his last moments with Natalee and basically just restates a lot of what he had already said in previous statements. So he's not producing more information. He is just trying to make some money.
Well, I don't blame him if your reputation is completely ruined, especially if you're innocent. If you get tagged in a infamous case and your reputation is ruined, you might as well make money off of it with a book deal.
Exactly. So,
I mean,
yeah, logical.
yeah.
You probably can't get hired anywhere else because they're like, oh, you're that guy that maybe probably did something to that girl.
You murdered her, like, judged by the media.
Yep.
So,
and I think he's still in college at this point, so he's just preparing.
Makes sense.
Now, perhaps feeling that they were in over their heads or maybe sick of dealing with the media and Natalee's family, the Aruban authorities requested that the Netherlands take over. That's why I told you about the constituent country.
Got it.
Get it? Okay. Listen, learn. Under new leadership, the investigation continued. When they originally searched at Yaren's house, it had been limited just to his apartment and personal effects. Now, in May 2007, they had permission to search the whole property. The Netherlands Forensic Institute, basically the Dutch FBI, dug around Yaren's house for 2 days. But like Groundhog's Day, there were no reports of anything being uncovered, although they did take journals, computers, and a few other items. The house where Deepak and Satish Kalpoe lived was also searched, but there was nothing taken for evidence there either. A few months later, Yaren and the Kalpoes were rearrested. This is now the third time, on November 21st. But again, there was not enough evidence to keep them. And the Kalpoes were released December 1st, and Yaren was released on December 7th.
they must not have had attorneys because in the US, they would be claiming that it's harassment at this point.
I feel like they should have said this there too. They did have attorneys, but this is just how it was in Aruba. You could be brought in and held, and I think arrest has such a stronger connotation for us here.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem, at least from what I gathered, to be such a serious thing there.
It's crazy.
But either way, with nothing further to go on, authorities closed the case on December 18th, 2007, 2.5 years after Natalee was last seen alive.
It's interesting that they would close it as opposed to just declare it cold.
Again, I think that's probably a difference in countries, because I think I read that they could just reopen it if new evidence had surfaced. So I think it's essentially the same thing.
I just thought Arubian. It's Arubian law.
Oh, we have a new one to add to the collection. That's good.
We're gonna true crimeify all the Disney songs.
So Beth and Dave were frustrated at this point. There had been no progress. It had been years. They still have no more information than literally the day that Natalee had disappeared. So they decided to hire Tim Miller, a private investigator. He was especially invested in finding Natalee. Years earlier, the body of his own daughter was found after she had been missing for 2 years. So he founded Texas EquuSearch as a memorial to her.
Oh.
Feeling that they'd exhausted their search on land and remembering that potentially coincidental break-in into the fisherman's hut, EquuSearch embarked on an offshore mission. But finding Natalee's remains in the ocean was more challenging than finding a needle in a haystack. They'd need highly sensitive equipment to make the search possible. Enter a man named Louis Schaefer, who had been following Natalie's story and offered to help. He just happened to have made his millions in underwater exploration.
Wow.
Convenient.
Yes. Throughout the month of December, his ship scanned the seafloor until on Christmas Eve, 2007, they saw something. It was a large lobster trap containing what appeared to be human remains.
Oh, wow.
4 days later, they dropped a remotely operated vehicle to inspect further. And I'm kind of picturing like the scene from Titanic right now.
Exactly
it
what
had
I'm
been 84
picturing.
years. The images they got back were promising. So promising, in fact, that the Aruban police authorized a diver to go down the next day. But sadly, the diver verified this was not Natalee, and it may not even be human remains. They did still collect what material they could and gave it to the FBI just in case there was any useful forensic evidence, but it was yet another dead end.
I was so hopeful.
I know.
I was like, oh,
And
man.
so were they.
So they found the body, but the case is unsolved. Yeah. That's what I thought for a minute.
I know. And there's a quote from, I think it was Tim Miller, that said that he thought it had been poetic, that it was Christmas Eve that they found it, and they just had such hope that maybe they had found her.
That's what I was thinking about the date a lot. Like,
Yeah.
that has to be so hard. You've already had all these other false alarms, false sightings.
Yep.
And then on Christmas Eve, you're thinking like, man, I've got some hope finally. And it's just another dead end yet again.
Exactly. But things weren't quiet for long. In early 2008, not to be confused with 2008, Peter de Vries, a Dutch TV crime reporter, secretly videoed Joran saying that he had witnessed Natalee's death and arranged to dispose of her body.
Oh, wow.
In November 2007, someone by the name of Patrick Van Der Eem had reached out to Peter to say that he had become friends with Urine and thought that Urine was not telling the entire truth. So after some discussion, Patrick agreed to record Urine, but they had planned to begin recording on November 22nd, or the day after Urine and the Calpos had been arrested. So after they had to wait until Urine was released, and when he was, he called Patrick and bragged that he hadn't told the police anything. He said that his father, who had, by the way, sued the government for imprisoning Urine without reason. So there you go. I forgot about that part. He said his father was going to win the case. And when Patrick asked if Urine thought they'd ever find Natalee's body, Urine said, quote, "The ocean is big, Patrick. The ocean is big."
Wow.
On a second recording of a conversation between the two, Urine told Patrick that Natalee had begun convulsing like a seizure when they were being intimate on the beach. He said he shook her. Specifically, he said, "I was shaking that bitch."
Wow.
But she died in his arms. He told Patrick that he then called a friend, Dory Rodriguez, and told him what happened, and then asked for his help to dispose of Natalee's body since Dory had a boat. An article I read noted that there is a sandbar off the north end of the island, and if one were to dump a body beyond that where it's open to the Atlantic Ocean, the currents are such that the body would never be found. Now, Urine's lawyer said that he was high during these conversations and he just made up the story to impress Patrick. But there are almost 10 hours of tape where he doesn't sound like he's joking. Regardless, a judge determined that there was not sufficient evidence to arrest Urine again.
Wow.
Dory, the friend that Urine claimed had helped him, actually came forward and said that none of this was true. In fact, he was barely friends with Urine. They had just played poker together. Moreover, he didn't even own a boat, and he hadn't been in Aruba at the time of Natalee's disappearance.
Oh.
Okay, so maybe he is making up some of this stuff. It's a weird way to try to impress your friend, but...
Yes. And it was later revealed that Patrick had actually known Urine for years and already knew some of the information Urine had told him, but Patrick was never arrested or questioned.
So is Patrick trying to just get his 15 minutes of fame in all of this, we think?
I think so. I don't really know, but he did write a book also.
Of course he did.
Like everyone else.
Yep.
His was called Overboard. I did not read all of these books.
Shame on you.
After all of my articles, I decided that was plenty.
You're missing data.
Yeah, trust me, it's actually, as I was writing these, I was like, I wish I knew. Maybe I should read a synopsis. No.
Did it physically pain you to not read those? Yeah.
Yes. If you had given me more time before this case and said, oh, you should just record in a couple weeks, I totally would have read them. Unrelated, Patrick was arrested the same year for hitting his girlfriend with a crowbar. So I don't think he's a wonderful person.
Okay.
No. In a sad turn of events, see, I have plenty of unrelated information in here. In a sad turn of events, Peter, who was the reporter through all this, was shot in the head and killed in 2021 in a murder that was actually filmed and posted online by those believed responsible.
What the fuck?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly why he was targeted, but his profession had him exposing the crimes of really dangerous people, so I'm sure it was related to that. But
wow.
Really crazy.
I think all I've said for the past 20 minutes is wow.
Yeah. That's like, you said this earlier, Colby, like, I'm pretty sure all I knew about this was that it was Aruba, that she was a young girl who had disappeared while on vacation. I did not know any of this. No. So, having apparently not learned his lesson from earlier interviews, although did he ever really have consequences? I don't think so.
No.
In November 2008, Urine participated in another interview on Fox News' On the Record. In this appearance, he changed his story. He claimed, now we're really changing our story. He claimed he met a man in the hotel casino in February 2005, so that was the year Natalee disappeared, who said to, quote, bring him a blonde girl. For money, of course, so he would get about $10,000 for it. Urine notified this man when they were leaving the bar with Natalee, and the man said to meet him at the Marriott. Urine says Deepak and Satish were in on it. He gave them each about $1,000. And when they got to the beach, Urine and Natalee made out a bit. But then the guy came up, grabbed Natalee, gave Urine a bag, which I don't know of what, maybe of money, and then brought her to a boat that was already in the water. He says Natalee was drunk, so that's why she didn't struggle.
Human trafficking? Is that what we're...
I think that's what he's alluding to. I don't really know. But he later said that his claims in this interview were also a lie. So I feel like we need Maury here.
Yeah.
and determine it's a lie.
Oh, that's how I was doing the last episode, or one of the last episodes. Where I was like,
It
and the
was
lie
Lori-
detector test
Yes.
determined that was a lie.
Exactly.
It was definitely the Lori Vallow case.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Don't get me started on that bitch.
Yeah. So at this point, speaking of terrible people, I am definitely of the opinion that Joran is not an innocent man. He did something. He is most definitely a liar. But maybe there's some bits of truth to his story. Maybe she really did die of some kind of medical emergency and he panicked. I'm not convinced completely that he murdered her.
Yeah. What incentive, like what would be the motive to
Right.
murder her? I could definitely more realistically see somebody's going to pay me money for
Right.
a girl
Yep.
that matches this description.
Right.
I could see taking advantage of her on the beach, but why kill her?
Yeah. I don't know. And again, he's a kid.
Yeah.
Certainly not that kids can't. And I guess
Craig Price.
Yeah, exactly. And he was 17 and he was a big guy. He was, I forget how tall, but a very tall guy. Certainly capable, but yeah, I'm not convinced. I see the doubt. I have more than reasonable doubt. But let's fast forward 2 years. On March 29th, 2010, Joran contacted Beth, that's Natalee's mother, to say that he would tell her where Natalee's remains were if she would give him $250,000.
Okay, you're
Casual.
okay.
He said he'd tell her the location for $25K and then take the remaining money once the remains were officially identified. Believing that Joran had killed her daughter and would have this kind of information, Beth immediately sent him the $25K.
Wow.
When the transfer cleared, Joran told Beth that his father, Paulus, had actually been the one to bury Natalee, and it was near a house, and he provided directions to it. While Beth organized a search, and this took quite a bit of time because she's back in the United States at this point, Joran traveled from the Netherlands to Colombia and then Peru, so just a little gallivanting.
Field trip.
But soon after, it was discovered that the house that Joran referred to hadn't even been built in 2005. When confronted with this fact, Joran admitted he made the whole thing up.
He's really playing with fire.
Yeah.
Fucking
Oh, yeah.
around like this when he is already a suspect.
He's going to find out. So an FBI-led U.S. attorney filed a suit against Joran for extortion and wire fraud on June 3rd, 2010.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
But you know what? That soon wouldn't matter. Authorities had bigger fish to fry when it came to Joran's crimes. He was about to be charged with first-degree murder. Not of Natalee. On the same exact day that Joran's arrest warrant was issued for the extortion and wire fraud charges, he was arrested in Chile for murdering Stephanie Flores Ramirez while they were in Peru.
Oh, wow.
Stephanie, just 21, was the daughter of Peruvian businessman and race car driver Ricardo Flores. Her body was discovered by hotel staff on June 3rd, 2010, stabbed to death in her room. Police believe that she had been killed Sunday, May 30th, or the 5-year anniversary of Natalee's disappearance.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Stephanie, too, broke our grim rule. She lit up a room. Her brother said she was always smiling, always nice to everyone. In her 3rd year of college, studying business administration in order to join the family enterprise, she was very determined and successful. Unfortunately, she was also very trusting. So maybe to take a break as a reward for her hard work, she had attended a poker tournament at the hotel that May evening where she encountered Joran. Sound familiar?
Yep, it sounds very familiar.
So after a late night, she followed Joran to a hotel room around 5 in the morning, but like the Hotel California, she could never leave. Joran confessed that he killed her because when he had left to pick up some food, she had started to look him up on the internet using his laptop.
Uh-oh.
She was asking questions about his involvement with Natalee's disappearance, and many believe that she might have also found some incriminating evidence. They started fighting, and he attacked her. Joran hit Stephanie repeatedly, strangled her, shook her, and threw her on the floor. He then used his own shirt to suffocate her, breaking her neck.
Oh my gosh.
Poor Stephanie. How violent to a
Super
shirt to
violent.
break someone's neck?
And he showed no remorse. After she was dead, he went downstairs and brought food back up to the room where he ate breakfast next to Stephanie's cooling body.
No.
Okay, I'm pretty sure he murdered Natalee.
So
now
that
I'm
was
feeling-
that was my exact thought.
Now I'm feeling away.
Yeah. Because I don't remember this whatsoever in relation to Natalie's case.
I have opinions now.
Yes, same.
And like I was just saying, what would be the motive for murdering Natalee? I don't know. I see a very clear motive for murdering Stephanie if she found something or she asked the wrong question or I don't know. Probably like a strong Peruvian woman. She probably has like a lot of like gumption or spunk to her. So she probably could have been like very confrontational in like the best possible way.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it was just the wrong person to step to.
Well, I think of what that FBI profiler said of Urine, that he was not used to being told no. He was used to being the boss of things. And it's possible that that's also what happened with Natalee is, well, we'll talk theories at the end, but maybe she did try to deny him and he wasn't having it. So when Urine left the hotel room, leaving, of course, Stephanie's body just in the room, he took her cash, jewelry, credit cards, ID, and her car, although he abandoned the car shortly after. In Peru, there are no juries, so 3 judges were assigned to decide his fate. This is probably for the best for Urine. He would not have fared well with a panel of his peers. Even the police were visibly rough with him as they brought him from a transport vehicle to the courthouse, and people actually threw rotten vegetables at him. They were just so angry at the senseless homicide. There was plenty of physical and circumstantial evidence to convict Urine of Stephanie's murder. When he was arrested, he had a bag of bloody clothes with him.
Oh my gosh.
And they had CCTV footage of him entering the hotel room with Stephanie and then leaving alone. There were cameras all over the hotel. The list goes on. The maximum sentence he was facing was 30 years, which actually seemed pretty low to me. Although the Peruvian justice system often issues a lighter sentence in cases in which the suspect confesses, on January 13th, 2012, Urine was sentenced to 28 years in prison, so nearly the full 30.
They gave him the 2 off.
Yeah, exactly. And in another strange connection between Stephanie's case and Natalee's, Urine's sentencing came just a day after Natalee was legally declared dead. Wow. Which was at the request of primarily Dave, her father. Originally, Beth was against it for obvious reasons, but Dave was doing it just because he was like still paying insurance on her. There were a whole lot of kind of almost administrative things that are caused.
Procedural red tape.
Exactly. So despite Natalee's legal death and the case seemingly going cold, glimmers of hope still emerged. In November 2010, a piece of jawbone was found on a beach in Aruba and was tested to see if it belonged to Natalee. It was found in the sand just a mile south of the Holiday Inn. Tourists spotted it and turned it into their hotel, who in turn alerted the police. There was still a molar attached, so everyone was optimistic that they'd be able to connect it to Natalee. But sadly, just a week later, investigators confirmed the jaw did not belong to Natalee.
Who did it belong to?
That was also my question. Because it was definitely human.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Just floated ashore. They're like, well, it's not Natalie's. Throw it away.
A couple examples of things like that happening. Like a lot of, they found, even in the earlier searches, they found so many bones. A lot of them were animal. You know, there's just a lot to be found.
Okay, the animal, fine. But like if you find a jawbone, you're like, well, it's not Natalie's. Okay, well then whose is it?
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
I'm upset by that.
I know. That's what you choose. I was going to say that's the thing you're going to focus on. Okay.
That's the hill I'm going to die on.
Okay. Excellent. So Dave continued to search for his daughter, hiring another private investigator, TJ Ward, to help. And in 2017, they got a new lead. There's a whole series that I watched on Peacock called The Disappearance of Natalee Holloway that follows Dave's experience with this, but I'll share just some of the highlights. A man named Gabriel came forward and claimed he knew someone who had become friends with Urine in 2010, to whom Urine had confessed. The friend, an American named John Ludwig, said that Urine told him Natalee had overdosed after taking drugs that Urine had put in her drink at the bar.
Yep.
He says he panicked and called his dad for help. John also said that Urine had offered to give him $1,500 to dig up Natalee's body, which had been buried in Aruba's national forest, and dispose of her remains. So John's information brought Dave and TJ to a location where they did discover human skeletal remains. But once tested, it was determined that they did not belong to Natalee. And in this one, I did write, a larger question is, whose remains were they? Because they were.
Finding a lot of bones out there.
This reminds me, what is that? What is, was it Serial? That forest where they're like, if you dig, you're going to find a body.
Yeah.
Like, it might not be the body you're looking for, but you'll find a body. Like, what is going on in this one happy island?
I know.
Why are there so many bones?
They're killing all the unhappy people.
Yeah, that's why they're so happy.
No, it does make you question about like the whole conspiracy theory on the corruption and all that and what was happening with prosecuting. I mean, I did not go deep into any of that stuff, but it does make you wonder. But they would never get the answer, at least as it relates to John, because he was later stabbed to death in 2018 by a woman he tried to kidnap. So just a really terrible cast of characters here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. There it is. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what else can be done? Unless Urine speaks out, I'm not sure we'll ever know. And he's spoken, quote unquote, the truth many times, only to take it back later. So,
but he confessed about Stephanie, right?
He did, but there was so much evidence. They have video of him all the way from the front desk up to the room, leaving the room alone. Stephanie, I'll post a picture of it. The CCTV is pointed in the hallway right at their room. So you see them very clearly going in and only urine coming out. But I think the odds that he knows what happened to her are basically 100%.
Yes.
I am not sure that he murdered her, but I think that the odds are pretty... Again, prior to learning about Stephanie's murder, I would have said, I don't know, maybe something could have happened. I'm pretty confident that he was to blame. I don't know about his father's involvement. His father died a few years later, so we'll never know for sure there either, but I don't have any... I mean, Urine kept bringing it up, which kind of seems strange to me. Why? It wasn't like he was really trying to redirect blame, but there are a lot of instances where in the stories he mentioned his father's involvement, but I don't know. I don't know.
Is it possible that his father really did help? What you told us about Urine is that he ruled the roost, right? In his house, what he wanted was done. So for somebody that has a relationship like that with their parents, maybe he helped him do something. This is like another case we talked about. Whose dad was it?
Oh, Paul. Kristen
was it in
Smart.
Kristen Smart?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That's what it's just reminding me of, is like someone's parent who's like not like happy about the situation, but like they kind of go into instinct mode and they want to protect their kid. There's nothing they can do about the deceased at that point.
I get that vibe too, because it's just, it doesn't seem like he was so resourceful to figure it out on his own. And like her body's, I would be very confident that her body's not on the island. I think it's been whatever we decided, way too many years now, 18 years now. And I just think they would have found it. I think the odds that it is, and I shouldn't say it, the odds that her body is out in the ocean somewhere, I think are extremely high.
I would agree. I think in the ocean. I think every time he told a story, there was probably a little bit of truth in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think so. And I think, I mean, if I'm Beth and Dave, I think I would endlessly hold out hope.
Yep.
Beth actually created the Natalee Holloway Resource Center based at the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in downtown Washington. The nonprofit center aims to provide families with an action plan, examples of missing persons posters, contacts, media liaisons, and other services to guide families through crises. Officials also say they'll provide educational programs on safe traveling and crime prevention and encourage careers in forensic science and law enforcement. And I think when that series ended that I watched on Dave doing all the searching for his daughter, I don't think he'll ever give up. If I'm him, I'm thinking I was right. She shouldn't have gone, And obviously I hope he doesn't have any tiny bit of blame whatsoever. But I'm sure that you're feeling like, man, if we had just not let her go, if we had just kept her home, if it had just been one more day or anything. So terribly tragic. I think, just like I said with Jason's story, it's just heartbreaking because you will likely never know.
And somehow never knowing is worse than knowing that your child is no longer on this earth.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Just listening to all of this, I kind of do think that, okay, I believe that they went to the beach that night after.
So
because that came up enough times, and why, that's nothing nefarious about just being on the beach in general. So I do believe that they would have gone to the beach. I don't know that he intended to kill her still. He definitely intended to kill Stephanie, but I think it could have been like something with the drugs that he gave her. Like maybe he gave her a little bit too much of something, or maybe she had I don't even know, but like some kind of pre-existing condition that something interacted with, and how would he have known?
The police actually way early on in the investigation asked Beth about that, if she had ever had seizures before. So that, now we have like I feel like if this were a United States case, we would have seen some kind of interview transcripts or something by now. We have nothing. So I wonder if Yarn actually did answer and say like she had this seizure and all that. Either that's just his story and he was sticking to it, or there was something legitimate, but she had never had seizures or anything. But she's also like, I don't know if she very much could have been a responsible and smart and successful student prior to going to Aruba and have drank. But she might not have. And if that's the case, maybe she really, or even if she had drank before, just had way too much alcohol, and maybe there was some kind of reaction with the drug. There's only so much a body can take. So I'm with you.
I do think he disposed of her somehow. I would not be surprised if his father was involved trying to protect his son. It would be weird for him to call the friends instead, like Deepak and Satish at 2:45 or 3, unless he's like, oh, guys, you're not going to believe the freaking night that I just had.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I don't know why. And that's phone records, so that's truth that we know that he called. Maybe he did have his father help, and then while that was happening, he asked them to pick him up. I don't know.
Or his dad could have helped him after the fact, like with what to say and what not to say.
Think he definitely did. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm very excited.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. I think he definitely did and was definitely coaching him on responses and how to articulate things to make him look okay. But I don't know. It's as we always say, it's incredibly tragic, incredibly frustrating. I don't know why I did this to myself because I don't like unsolved cases. But it's so much more to this than I realized when I started down this path. So
yeah, I didn't know any of this background information though. We were in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just had started, just past like sophomore year probably. Yeah. Around there. So anyway, hey, if you're enjoying Grimm, there are a number of ways to get more Grimm or grimmer. I don't know. Grimmer.
Get as grim as you can get.
Get as grim as you can get. I like that. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at Grimm Crime Podcast, and on Facebook, just search Grimm, a true crime podcast, where you can see all of the case photos and all sorts of other great content. If that's not enough and you just need more Grimm, more Cabo, anyone, you can sign up for our Patreon, which Marina mentioned at the top of the show. Depending on which tier you choose, you can get bonus episodes and even access to our Discord server, which we also mentioned, where it's all Grimm all the time. As a reminder, we are streaming on just about every platform, but if there are other places you prefer to listen to podcasts and we're not there, let us know. You can send us an email at grimmcrimepodcast@gmail.com, and that's where you can also send case suggestions or DM us or just contact us in any way. We love suggestions. So thanks for being here, and remember, listen, learn, and stay alive until next time, because the future is grim.